mucho más fácil. Cuando es más chiquitito, ¿ves?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Maya, for inviting me, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for engaging in my paper, the paper I submitted about a week ago. I would be very happy to tell not just about the content of the paper, but also the process that I went through as I produced it, because it was a great experience that I'm really happy to share. But to begin with now, I have to present the content and to contextualize it within the broad context of my overall research and the research project I'm involved in. So I started my PhD in Manchester as part of a broader research project led by Karen Sykes and Chris Gregory, intended to investigate the anthropology of value in the Asia-Pacific region. And my contribution to that project is an ethnographic research in Solomon Islands, which is situated in the South Pacific. And more specifically, I was working between the island of Malaita and Guadalcanal. I concentrated on a group of migrants from the island of Malaita who went to live in Honiara, and more specifically, I concentrated on an illegal settlement situated on the outskirts of the capital city of Solomon Islands, Gilbert Camp. I want to start with an excerpt of my diary, which is included in the paper as well. This is the way in which I came across the exchange ritual that I analyze in this paper. Saturday, November 12th, 2011. Around 8 in the evening, about 100 people gathered in the courtyard of the Christ the King Church, the Anglican Church of Gilbert Camp. The gathering was announced during the last Sunday service as the closing event of the annual program of the Mothers' Union. Tonight, I observed 3 main social happenings: a succession of dances, a sequence of choral songs, and a series of gift exchanges. These 3 events were interspersed with speeches by the chaplain, the leaders of the Mothers' Union, plus some jokes and pantomimes. And there was also a banquet, where as a guest I had the opportunity to savor local dishes based on cassava, sweet potato, fish, watermelon, cucumbers, and a very original portion of white rice decorated with lollipops. However, I must admit that I was there only out of courtesy to Gordon, the head of the household in which I'm living. I arrived less than 2 weeks ago and still struggle to get into research mode. Today, Gordon asked me if I could take pictures of the event, and I was happy to do that, also because I was not in the mood to do research. So, during the ritual, I was taking pictures without really asking myself too many questions about what was going on in front of my camera. And I did so until I noticed something that I found at least peculiar. 36 women, all members of the Mothers' Union, exchanged gifts during 18 exchanges. Each pair of exchangers performed the exchange within a circle. The pairs met at the center, and 2 women presented their gifts at turns. At the beginning, everything looked pretty normal to me, but then I noticed something that captured my attention: what the women were donating to each other. I saw Delilah giving a set of dishes and cups to Madeleine, and Madeleine reciprocating with a set of dishes and cups too. They were the same type of dishes, the same cups, and they were equal in quantity. Why are they exchanging equal amounts of the same things? I asked myself. Maybe Delilah and Madeleine have accidentally bought the same gift, I thought. That would close the question, were it not for the fact that also Wendy and Ethel each donated to the other the same amount of cups and plates. At that point, I started to feel the suspicion that that was not by chance. That night, all the participants were enjoying the feast very much, and I did not want to bother anyone with the many questions that were popping in my head after what I saw. But I was sure, though, that it was not the case that they were exchanging things in equal amounts by chance. If that was not the case, I thought, then I might have a case. So the day after I started to investigate this ritual, I started to ask questions to the women who took part. And I came up with a basic definition of this ritual. It was organized in order to exchange equal amounts of the same things. So the first rule was that the gift had to meet the wishes of the receiver. The second rule was that receiver and giver had to spend the same amount of money. But there were exceptions to these two principles. Some women exchanged gifts of different kind, and some women exchanged gifts of different price. Those who exchanged different objects explained me that the reason was simply that they needed different objects. So they met before the ritual and said, I need cups and plates. Yes, but I need a big plate, so please could you buy a big plate for me? And that was it. Concerning the differences in price, two pairs exchanged the gifts of different monetary value. And they gave interesting reasons for that. The first pair is Muriel and Lily. As you can see from the table, Muriel gave cups and plates for $130, and Lily gave the same, but in the amount of $170. I'm talking about Solomon Islands dollars. The second case is the pair formed by Annette and Rose. Annette gave cups and plates for $130 and received cups and plates for only $100. When I met Muriel, and later when I met Lily, they both laughed when I asked them, why did you buy gifts of different monetary value? Both replied, well, she's my cousin sister. We don't need to give the same. As you can see from this table, a cousin sister corresponds more or less to a classificatory sister. What they meant with that sentence was that relatives do not need to exchange the same. Later, I met Rose, and it was not necessarily related to the Sikret Fren ritual. I had to interview her for the purposes of the larger research project I mentioned before. So I had a questionnaire, and I was reading the questions. One of the questions was, do you belong to any group, political or religious group? And at that point, she started to look down on the right as if she was thinking about something. So I asked her, are you thinking about something? And she said, yes, I forgot to do something. Okay, can I ask you what it was? Yeah, I forgot to buy some cups. And we were sipping tea, and we were surrounded by many cups. So I said, but you have plenty of cups. Why do you need more? And she said, no, you know, the celebration last week, my friend bought cups and plates for me for $130, and I only gave her cups and plates for $100. So I have to go to buy $30 of cups for her. What she meant by that is that people who are not related by kinship must not be in debt with each other. Friends have to exchange equal amounts, relatives don't. This differentiation helps us to understand the logics underpinning this exchange ritual. My understanding is that within the ritual, they have to exchange the same because they look at each other as friends. They might not be friends outside of the ritual. They might be relatives or not. But what's important is that it is within the ritual that they look at each other as friends. So my first answer to the question, what is Sikret Fren, is that it is a ritual of like-for-like gifts organized by women who look at each other as friends. In order to go deeper into the interpretation of this ritual, I came up with these two lines of analysis, an economic one and a moral one. If you look at the economy of the settlement, we see that the average household earns about £108 fortnight. And because the average household is composed by about 7 people, we see that each person has about £1 a day to survive. It follows that they definitely do not have enough money to buy gifts and at the same time to buy the food to survive. So they have a problem when they want to make gifts. They can't even save for themselves, let alone organize birthday parties or parties for the end of the school or the New Year or Christmas. Interestingly, the Sikret Fren was organized precisely at a time in the year in which many of these celebrations take place. As I said, the New Year's Eve, Christmas, the end of the high school, the end of the summer school. So maybe I thought maybe they are concentrating these many opportunities for celebrations and opportunities for giving gifts into a single event to publicly display how much they value their community. But there is still the problem that they need to buy useful things because they cannot afford to buy things that are just for the pure sake of giving a gift. So that's why they bought cups and plates, because that's what they need to eat and to drink. i.e. to meet basic needs. So my first conclusion was that the logic underpinning this ritual was a balance between economic need and moral aim. In that sense, economy and morality are given the same value. But, and I thank Peter Wade for suggesting me this interpretation. Actually, if you can buy the things you need in the corner shop and spend the same amount of money you would spend to buy the gift for someone who would reciprocate with the same thing you need, then what's the point of organizing this whole ritual? In other words, there is no economic benefit in organizing the ritual. You can go in the shop, spend the same amount of money, and get what you need. So the whole thing that is built around the purchase of useful goods has a name that is different from an economic one. And that's why I ended up thinking that the whole point of organizing this ritual is morality, is displaying and concretizing the value of friendship. But then, is this the conclusion? I think that an anthropologist should never consider morality as a uniform thing. There are many different kinds of moralities around the world, and here we are in a very specific context. So I had to look at the notion of morality from the point of view of a Melanesian people, rather than assuming that moral value is the same thing for them as it is for me. So in order to look at the issue of morality in the context of like-for-like exchange in Melanesia, I went to look in the library for books and ethnographies that deal with the problem of like-for-like gifts. And obviously, one of the first guys I looked at is Bronislaw Malinowski, who pioneered the ethnographic study of Melanesia. I found confirmation of my non-economistic interpretation in his writing. Basically, what he says is that there is no point in looking at like-for-like exchange in Melanesia from an economistic point of view. I want to quote what he says because he says it in a very poignant way. He asked, "Why make a present of something if it cannot be returned except in the same form?" There are two faulty assumptions in asking this question. The first one is assuming that there can only be an exchange as long as there is differential access to resources. So there can only be exchange if what you have is something I don't have and what I have you don't have. That is not the case here. And the second faulty assumption is that as long as there is no material gain, there is no point in making an exchange. In the Trobriand, he said, there is not even a trace of gain, nor is there any reason for looking at it from the purely utilitarian and economic standpoint. Only 5 minutes. Okay, I'll try to rush. Tell me when I have just 1 minute, please. Thank you. Anthony Forge continued this line of thinking, and he said that like-for-like gifts exchanges are means through which Melanesians establish equality while at the same time increasing their prestige. That sounds a bit contradictory because how can you maintain equality as you grow in your prestige? And we find an answer in another ethnographic study by Andrew Strathern. He conceptualized the idea of alternating disequilibrium, which is possible because when I give you a gift, you look at me as a very generous person. Thus, my prestige increases. And you would feel to a certain extent dominated because you would feel debt towards me. In the long run, you would try to reciprocate. But because you don't want to balance the accounts, you would give me another pig, but something on top of it, maybe some cassava or taro pudding or some bananas. And at that point, the dominating relationship would be reversed. I would be in debt with you, and I would look at you as a very generous and kind person. So how looking at traditional Melanesian gift exchange helps us to understand Sikret Fren? By making a comparison, I thought. So Sikret Fren is a simultaneous exchange of gifts, whereas the inverted commas traditional Melanesian like-for-like exchange is asynchronous. It happens over a long time. Sikret Fren is non-competitive, whereas the other one is competitive. But there are also some commonalities. Equality of objects, as we have seen, gifts of the same price, or pigs. and equality of people. Both exchange regimes are aimed at establishing a relation of equality. I thought that the relation of equality could be interpreted also on the basis of the fact that many among the women who exchanged didn't know each other's names. That was peculiar because in a Melanesian village, usually you know everybody, you know everybody's name. And that was not the case in Gilbert Camp. And the reason is that, at least I think, it's because of a hybrid socioeconomic context. It has some features that we would likely find in an urban environment rather than a rural one. We all know that in our urban neighborhoods, we don't know the people who live around us. And it's very much the same in Gilbert Camp. Although, if you look at it, it looks very much like a traditional Melanesian village in terms of architecture and environment. There are palm trees and streams of water, and there are children playing around, and they sleep in each other's houses, and the women go to dig out some tubers in the gardens. But we also have shops in which commodities are sold. And as we know, commodities belong to a completely different exchange regime than the gift exchange. So the hybridity of the context can be very aptly visualized with this air view of Gilbert Camp. And we can place the features of the Sikret Fren and the traditional Melanesian exchange on this map. It's simultaneous, very much like commodity exchange. It's non-competitive, but it is made on the basis of the equality of objects and the equality of people, very much like traditional Melanesian exchange. So it's a hybrid rituals in terms of the logics that underpins it. And I think that the reason why, yes, thank you, the reason why it is hybrid, it is that its socioeconomic context is hybrid. As I said before, commodities are simultaneous, very much like the exchange of gifts in the Sikret Fren. They are commensurable. Money is a commodity that is exchanged with a good because it values the same, very much like in the Sikret Fren ritual. Commodities are exchanged between aliens, people who do not know each other, as it was largely the case within the ritual. And there is no need to reciprocate as long as you give what the other person expects from you the same value during the exchange. Otherwise, you would need to balance the account after the exchange, as it was the case in the Sikret Fren ritual. So, according to the analysis, I would tend to end up saying that what the people exchanged during the ritual were actually commodities and not gifts. But it is ethnographically documented that they were gifts from the point of view of the people. So my final answer is that these objects are at the same time gifts and commodities, which is precisely the kind of objects that we would likely find in a hybrid socioeconomic context such as Gilbert Camp. Thank you for your attention.